Okay, to the next phase of the French election. If Act Two were to happen today, the latest poll shows centrist Emmanuel Macron handily beating far-right candidate Marine Le Pen. Macron leads the poll 63% to 37%, but round two is less than 2 weeks away, but you could say nearly 2 weeks away. In this Gaelic boxing match, today's cover of French newspaper Le Figaro is calling Macron's entry into the final, quote, a knockout punch for the right. Philip Crowther is the White House correspondent for France 24 television. The network is owned by the French government. Philip, the polls. These French polls turned out this time around to be much more reliable than the polls here in the United States about our presidential election. How much solidity, how much validity do you put into this number on our screen that if the vote were held today, Emmanuel Macron would just slay Marine Le Pen?
That's probably exactly the way it would be right now, but so much can happen between now and the day of the runoff election in just under 2 weeks' time, because a lot of French people have to make a very crucial decision now. There are those who voted for a far-left candidate, for example, or for the right-wing candidate, François Fillon, or for another of the 11 candidates that were in the race altogether. They will have to move now to a different camp, and that is what we're going to see happening over the next 2 weeks. There are those who will move to the camp of the centrist Emmanuel Macron. Then there are others, maybe a little bit more of an unlikely scenario, who might move over to Marine Le Pen, the far-right leader in France. And she's already making moves toward getting those voters on her side. She says she's no longer running as the candidate for the National Front. She just left the National Front until the election so that she can get more votes from right-wing candidate François Fillon, for example. It's all very tactical now. A lot of tactical votes will be happening in 2 weeks' time.
It sounds like many people in France will have to choose sort of the lesser of two evils. I mean, the current President Hollande is a socialist, but he says he will back Macron. And we also have Angela Merkel, the leader of Germany, backing Macron. So it sounds so similar, like echoes of the American election, where everybody, even serious Republicans, said, I can't vote for Donald Trump. And look what happened. He won the election. Could that happen in France?
It's pretty unlikely right now, because we do have a precedent to this. Back in the day when Marine Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, led the National Front party, he went into the runoff election with Jacques Chirac back in the day. And what happened in France was there was a coalition against Jean-Marie Le Pen back in the day, meaning that pretty much everybody decided to vote against her, with the exception of those hardline supporters she already had. Now, the hope of the establishment, and there is that key word in this French election, the hope of the establishment is that pretty much everybody will come out and vote against her. So she's trying to get as many right-wing voters on board as she possibly can right now.
As a business network, we're looking at the markets, which took off in the futures market overnight because Macron's platform seems better for the stock market. Big cut in corporate tax. He wants to have more leeway for companies to sort of free that 35-hour work week in France, which seems ridiculous to a lot of Americans who work 50, 60 hours a week and sometimes carry 2 jobs. But he also isn't part of that nanny state push where many French are actually paid not to work, or the benefits that the government gives are so attractive that they figure, why work when I can get everything else? He wants to change that. Can he win with that platform?
I think what he can win with more than anything is his pro-European stance, and that is really, I think, where the markets will come in more than anything, because what Marine Le Pen is suggesting is that she might want to have a referendum on EU membership for France that could eventually lead to what is being called a Frexit, an exit of France from the European Union. Emmanuel Macron is a very pro-European candidate. Now, of course, taking into account that the biggest trade partner for the United States is the European Union. France is one of the biggest trade partners within the European Union, and you can see why the stock market is reacting in that way right now. Macron is definitely the safer candidate, if you will, when it comes to trade relations with France and with the wider European Union. That is probably the main reason why the stock market and why investors are looking at the French elections so closely.
Philip, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The perspective there, Philip Crowther, France 24 White House correspondent.